It was just a piece of paper, an ordinary piece of paper, yellowed with age, slightly wrinkled. But a single sentence was enough to turn her world upside down. The sound of a heartbeat echoes, slow, deep, as if each pulse heralds something dark about to happen. In the background, tense music begins to build, almost imperceptible at first, but gaining momentum with each passing second. The close-up shows trembling fingers undoing the crease in the envelope. The nail scrapes the paper, making a scratchy sound as if the message itself resists being read. The camera slowly rises to the woman's face, but the image is blurred. The audience can't see who she is, only feel the tension in her body, her irregular breathing, the weight of that moment. The envelope had no return address, no special stamp, no clue. Just his name written in a strange, almost ancient handwriting, as if it had been written by hand simultaneously, in a hurry and hesitant. She hesitated before inside her screamed at her not to go any further. But curiosity and a feeling she couldn't name pushed her toward the decision that would change everything. Inside a sheet of paper folded in three, the paper had a distinctive scent, a scent she hadn't smelled in decades, a scent that took her back as if she'd been transported back in time to a place and a day she swore she'd forgotten. His eyes finally found the words. They were few, but carried an incalculable weight. The truth about your family lies in the place where it all began. She read it once, then again, and again. It didn't make sense. Or maybe it did, but it made such dangerous sense that his mind tried, at all costs, to deny it. Her breathing quickened. The background music grew louder, almost suffocating. The walls around her seemed to close in, as if the space was shrinking, forcing her to stare at that piece of paper. Who had sent it? Why now? And most importantly, what exactly did was a place where it all not to return to her childhood. Blurred images surfaced in her mind, laughter, distant voices, an old house with creaking doors, and the smell of damp wood. And amid these confused memories, a face she couldn't place, but which seemed to carry both affection and sadness. She felt a shiver run up her spine. It wasn't just a note. It was a summons, a key to a past that had never been explained. A promise of answers, but also of pain. Considered tearing up the paper, for a moment, throwing it away and forgetting about it. But she knew she couldn't. Something much greater than mere curiosity was pulling her into that story like a magnet. The note was there, burning in her hand, and deep down she had the feeling that once she opened that door, there would be no turning back. The words echoed in his mind, repeating themselves like a mantra. The place where it all began. The place where it all began. Outside, afternoon was falling. The sun painted the sky with orange hues, but she barely noticed the beauty of the sunset. With each passing second, the presence of the note grew more oppressive. It was as if the air in the house grew heavier, denser, making it difficult to breathe. And it was there, alone in the silence interrupted only by the distant sound of a wall clock, that Maria Helena realized the life she knew was about to fall apart. No matter how much he tried to cling to the comfort of the present, the past knocked on his door. She didn't know that that simple envelope was just the first step toward a discovery that had waited 3 decades to come to light. A secret that had been carefully buried and now finally demanded to be revealed. Maria Helena was 52 years old and lived in Santa Esperanza, a small town where everyone knew each other by name and news traveled faster than the wind. She was a literature teacher at the municipal school, beloved by her students and respected by her colleagues. Known for her kind smile, infinite patience, and the way she could transform even the most disinterested into book lovers. Since her parents passed away, she had lived alone in her old family home. It was a simple, quiet, and predictable routine. Coffee at 7 in the morning, school until early afternoon, occasional visits to the corner bakery, and silent nights with a good book. She believed she knew every detail of her own story. Until that day. The day began like any other. The distant sound of children playing in the street. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery filled the air. The mailman, as always, arrived promptly at 9:30. Maria Helena, unhurried, went to the door to collect the mail. Usually it was just bills, supermarket flyers, or letters from old friends. But that day something was different. On the floor, among the ordinary envelopes, there was a single one that stood out. Thick, yellowish paper, with no return stamp or any markings to indicate its origin. Just his name, handwritten in a firm handwriting, slanted slightly to the left. She felt a slight unease. She couldn't tell if it was curiosity or apprehension. With furrowed brows, she held the envelope and, for a few seconds, simply stared at it as if it might reveal its contents without needing to be opened. She entered the house and, sitting at the kitchen table, carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded in 3. No signature, no date. One sentence, written in the same handwriting as the envelope. The truth about your family lies in the place where it all began. The refrigerator's sound seemed louder. The clock's hands ticked away as if time had slowed down. She read it again and again, as if each rereading might unlock a hidden meaning. But the words were simple, direct, almost cruel. Maria Helena placed the note on the table and took a deep breath. Her mind began to wander through memories she hadn't visited in a long time. Summers at her grandparents' house, the smell of cake baking in the oven, the yard covered in dry leaves, the whispered conversations between adults when they thought she wasn't listening. There was something there, something she'd always felt but could never explain. Short silences during family dinners, looks exchanged between her parents when someone mentioned the past, sudden changes of subject whenever she asked too many questions about her early life. The note seemed to poke at that. Very old wound, the one she had learned to ignore. But why now? Why after so long? And even more disturbing, who would have sent it? She knew there was only one way to find out, and that was to face the places and memories she'd spent her life avoiding. Places where, deep down, she feared she'd find answers to questions she might have been better off never asking. As the wind blew against the window, making the curtain sway gently, Maria Helena looked at the note once more. The words, so short, seemed to grow before her eyes, as if screaming for her to follow them. And in that moment, not sure if she was ready for what was to come, she realized her life was about to change forever. The first step was taken. The next one could reveal a secret buried for 30 years. Maria Helena spent hours with the note in her hands, as if it were an unsolvable riddle. The paper was already crumpled by her restless fingers, but she couldn't let go. There was no signature. There was no date. There was no clue to reveal the author. Only that sentence, direct, dry, but with the power to stir everything inside her. The truth about your family lies in the place where it all began. At first, it seemed like a provocation, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized it wasn't random. It was specific, intimate. Whoever had written it knew his past, knew his pain. That night, Maria Helena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, images from the past came flooding back. A narrow hallway, the dim light of an old lamp, a woman's muffled laughter, the sound of a door slamming in the distance. And always the memory of a place I'd long avoided, my grandparents' old house. She hadn't set foot there in over 30 years. After her grandparents died, the place was closed, forgotten. The few times she considered visiting, a strange feeling made her stop. Perhaps fear, perhaps instinct. But that morning, tossing and turning in bed, she realized she could no longer escape. By the time the sun rose, the decision had been made. She grabbed her car keys, put on her coat, and set off. The road home was short, but every meter felt like a return to something she wasn't ready to face. The facade was covered in ivy and moss. The windows, boarded up, blocked out any light. The iron gate creaked loudly as it was pushed open, shattering the morning silence. Upon entering, the smell of mold and damp wood assaulted his nostrils. Each step made the floorboards groan, as if were protesting his presence. The walls were covered in dark stains, and the dust seemed frozen in time, covering furniture, paintings, and old photographs. She went straight to the back room, a room she'd avoided as a child. At the time, it was said to be just a storage room, but she'd always felt there was something different about it. There he found a heavy, solid wood cabinet leaning against the wall. It appeared as if it hadn't been moved since it was placed there. With effort, he pushed the cabinet aside, revealing a small, barely visible opening in the wall behind it. And there, shrouded in cobwebs and layers of dust, was a wooden box. It was simple but sturdy. It bore signs of wear, as if it had been handled many times before being hidden. When he tried to open it, he realized it was locked. Her heart raced. Who had put her there? And why? He looked around, searching for any clues. It was then that he noticed a nearby bookshelf covered in old books. Many were damaged, caught his eye, but one, a hardcover volume. The title faded, but one he recognized immediately. His mother had always kept it close by when she was alive, but she never allowed Maria Helena to open it. With trembling hands, he picked up the book. As he leafed through it, he realized it was hollow inside. In the hollowed-out space between the pages lay a small golden key, weathered by time. She held it, feeling the cold metal against her skin. She didn't know what she would find inside the box, but she was certain that by opening it, she would be crossing a line of no return. As she looked at the object in her hands, something inside her told her that the contents of that box could explain everything, or completely destroy the story she knew about herself. As she turned the key and heard the soft click of the lock, Maria Helena felt her stomach churn. The air around her seemed to have grown heavier, denser, as if the house itself were holding its breath along with her. He slowly lifted the lid of the box, and an ancient scent of aged paper, wood stored for decades, and something almost sweet, like lavender faded with age escaped. Inside lay carefully folded letters, yellowed photographs, and a sheaf of old documents. At the top, a photo caught her eye. She picked it up carefully, as if the mere touch might destroy it. It was a young woman with an intense gaze and a soft smile, holding a baby in her arms. The baby was her. He turned the photo over and made his legs handwritten. If you ever find this, know that I was taken away from you against my will. The words seemed to burn. She read and reread them, feeling each syllable like a wound being opened. Who was this woman? It was then that he noticed a name repeated on several letters inside the box. Teresa. With trembling hands, Maria Helena began to read. The letters were dated more than 3 decades ago. They were written with a mixture of affection and despair. Teresa spoke of her, of sleepless nights wondering what she was doing, of the pain of being unjustly separated. She also spoke of broken promises, of decisions made by those who called themselves family, and of a constant fear of not surviving to tell the truth. Maria Helena felt her heart race. Each new sentence seemed to shatter the story she knew about herself. The woman who raised her, whom she called mother, was not her biological mother. She remembered strange moments from her childhood questions about birth that were never answered, photo albums with pages ripped out, comments abruptly cut off. Suddenly it all made sense. But along with the answers came new questions, much more disturbing ones. Who had really taken Teresa away from her, and why? What had happened to his real mother? And perhaps most disturbing, why, after all this time, had someone decided she needed to know the truth? The distant sound of something falling on the roof made her shiver. It was as if the house were alive, witnessing that moment. A chill ran down her spine, but she didn't put the papers down. On the contrary, she began to dig even deeper. At the bottom of the box was a sealed envelope, different from the others. It was thicker, heavier, and had his name written in bold letters. But this one wasn't yellowed like the others. It looked recent. Maria Helena paused for a moment. The silence around her seemed absolute. Her heart was pounding so hard she could almost hear it. The presence of that recent envelope among objects stored for decades was proof that someone at some point not too long ago had tampered with that box. That meant only one thing. Someone knew she was coming. Maria Helena stood for long seconds, simply staring at the recent envelope in her hands. It was strange. Everything inside that box seemed to have stopped in time more than 3 decades ago, except for that single object, clean, dust-free, and without signs of aging. Her heart racing, she broke the seal. Inside was a single white sheet, unwrinkled and unworn. In the center, in large letters, was written, "It's not time to know everything yet, but when it is, I'll be waiting." No signature, no clue, just that sentence which sounded more like a warning or a threat. Maria Helena felt a mixture of frustration and fear. She had spent years believing her story was simple and peaceful, and in just a few minutes, everything had transformed into a labyrinth of secrets, lies, and carefully constructed silences. Clutching the box to his chest, he looked around the back room. The musty walls, the smell of neglect, the dim light filtering through the single window, everything seemed weighed down by an invisible weight. It was as if the house, once a home, was now nothing more than a vault of painful memories. Deep down, I knew that discovery was just the beginning. Teresa's letters revealed love and despair, but they didn't tell the whole story. Old documents revealed dates, places, and names she'd never heard before, as if pointing to a much larger puzzle. And that recent envelope was proof that she wasn't alone in this quest. Someone, somewhere, was following her every step. Maybe they'd watched her arrive home. Maybe they'd even known she'd opened the box that day. As he walked back to the door, he felt the cool morning breeze touch his face. The wind seemed to whisper that the past was not buried, merely dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Placing the box on the car seat, Maria Helena closed her eyes for a few seconds. She took a deep breath, trying to control her breathing. She knew that from then on, she could no longer live as before. There was a path ahead of her, and no matter how dangerous, she had no choice but to follow it. Perhaps she would never know who really sent that first note. Perhaps the truth was closer than she imagined, or further away than she could ever grasp. But one certainty was already engraved within her. The life she knew was over. And in the silence of that road, as the car drove away from the old house, a question echoed in her mind, and perhaps also in the hearts of everyone who knows stories like hers. Could it be that, deep down, we all have secrets about who we really are, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed?